spirit of the strong you stand. Father Creole, sing your song. The strength within your hands build pyramids like you, they stand. Lead on. The protector of the womb, your light illuminates the moon into dawn. Heavenly Queen, Nubian goddess, woman,
All right.
finally. Warrior mother, you just protect the sun and held the light.
Welcome, African family. Welcome to it. My name is Mukondeleli Mulaudzi wa Gwamasenga. Welcome to it, to the entire African family all over the world. As you saw in the title of our description, that we are talking about General Langley. Our thumbnail shows General Langley versus Captain Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso. And I do this purposely because it's quite interesting to me what we are witnessing in terms of, you know, the kind of focus that is coming now to Burkina Faso. It's quite interesting. By the way, my apologies for being late. I got occupied otherwise, but we are here now. And the whole thing is Burkina Faso. Why is it such a focus? You know? And I think about all the other African heads of state who are presiding over poor people, you know, disadvantaged, hungry people. And we are not getting a lot of focus on them. And yet, this brother, this particular brother, Ibrahim Traoré, is a big focus. You know, apparently he's doing terrible things to the people of Burkina Faso. I look at all other African countries where we have high levels of poverty. For example, South Africa, high levels of poverty and unemployment amongst the African majority in the country. By the way, if I can emphasize that, the African majority are the poorest in South Africa. And yet, the focus is on Burkina Faso. Why? And you know, you're going to hear it in... So General Langley is the commander of AFRICOM, Africa High Command, U.S. Africa Command. They say they are here to fight terrorism. They are here in Africa to fight terrorism, apparently. And so their claims are that since Ibrahim Traoré took over in Burkina Faso, the terrorism, quote-unquote, situation has gotten worse. It's incredible for me hearing that kind of thing, you know. And of course, it's not lost on me that we have an African face being used to champion this idea that the United States of America has to be involved in African security issues. An African American is being used, you know, and it just shows you the tactics have never changed. The tactics have never changed, my friends. So I want you to hear the contradictions. It's so incredible. It's so amazing, the contradictions that you will see with the United States of America and their foreign policy, especially towards Africa. It is so interesting to watch how the double standards are so evident. You know, I mean, it is crazy to see how this whole thing works out. But anyway, listen to the double speak of the United States of America. So let's start with General Langley appearing before Senate committee. What did he say when he appeared before that committee? Let's get into it.
Let me ask a few more questions here as we hopefully recess. Africa is a mineral-rich, resource-rich continent. Is that correct?
Yes, Chairman.
Okay, and you can leave the microphone on. Which are there success stories for the citizens of African countries when these larger, more prosperous nations or companies from more prosperous areas come in and exploit these minerals? What I'm asking is that does it ever redound to the benefit of the citizens there in Africa?
Question, African family. I'm sure those of you who live in Africa would have a very straight answer, very easy answer for this question. Does it ever benefit the African locals when foreign corporations come through in Africa and do business? Not really, does it? Not really. Except those who can be exploited for their labor in one way or the other. You know. Other than that, no, there is no real benefit for the locals. But I want us to listen to the response of Michael Langley. It's incredible, the level of dishonesty. Just listen to this. Listen to this, right? So, of course, let's remind ourselves, this is a Senate committee hearing in the United States of America. Okay? And those of us who know political history understand the role that has been played by Europe and America, or Euro-America, in the African continent in terms of the extraction of our natural resource. Now listen to what the general says when he's asked this question. I'm sure many of you would have expected that he would explain that no, all these foreign companies from France, from the United States, from the UK, you know, are extracting value and wealth and not really giving anything in return. But listen to what he says. Listen to this.
Chairman, there's very few cases. When the Chinese Communist Party is outed on them pulling out raw materials, not benefiting the populations of the host country, they've been trying to come up with ways how they can stay there and process only at the protests of the people of these African countries that host these mineral resources.
Okay.
Hold on. Let's hold it right there. So he says the Chinese Communist Party. So in other words, the Chinese are extracting value and wealth from Africa, and they're not leaving anything behind for the locals. Now, and he says then that this leads to protest among local communities against this. Guys, recently, in the Sahel region, in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, who have we been seeing being protested against? Has it been the Chinese? Has it been the Russians? Or has it been the French? We saw French flags being burnt in Burkina Faso, in Niger, in Mali. That's what we saw. But apparently, the locals are against Chinese exploitation, quote unquote. I mean, it's crazy to me. It's incredibly crazy to me how the response to this question pivots towards just how China is exploiting Africa. And yet to this day, not until recently, did any African country speak Chinese as a result of colonialism. But we have been speaking French, we have been speaking Spanish, we have been speaking Portuguese, we have been speaking English. Colonial languages that continue to divide us to this day. And yet, somehow, this pure moral United States of America somehow are able to blame the Chinese for extracting wealth from Africa. Guys, I mean, I hope you hear me. Somehow, the problem is the Chinese and the Russians. People's Republic of China, the Russian Federation. These are the problems in Africa. Of course, we, the United States, are pure. We are beautiful people. You know, we are here to help. The United States of America, we are here to help. It's incredible. You know, let's listen anyway. But I want you to take note of that. He does not begin to acknowledge the role of Europe and America in the destabilization of Africa and the different regions in Africa. He postures the United States of America as an ally, a friend, one who wants to help. It's incredible, isn't it? Let's listen.
So is there any exception? Can you point to any success story where the people of one country or one or two countries have actually benefited substantially?
Not on China's behalf. Not on China's behalf. Just what happened in Zambia when they had a spillage into the river that services 5 million people. There's just these mining concessions. It just doesn't turn out real well for the African countries.
And do the countries that are receiving entreaties from the Belt and Road Initiative, are they more and more mindful of that now and therefore reluctant?
Yes, and that's where we need to be able.
Now, take note how they're discussing African security matters and issues. There's no African present there. There's an African American who clearly does not identify with his African heritage, but rather his American status, and he's the one speaking as a legitimate voice on African issues. How does that make any sense? There's no African contributing to this conversation. But you can just hear the tone and the way they are discussing this. they seem to know best what is happening in Africa and what is best for us. It's incredible. As I listened to this conversation, I was absolutely shocked at the level of arrogance that these people have.
Do information operations to illuminate some of the irregularities and some of the malign type activities of the Chinese in African countries.
Information and
Again, I say, what did the Chinese ever do historically in Africa to colonize or any of that? I mean, I'm not saying they're our best friends or anything, but in realistic terms, we don't have a country dominated by Mandarin because of colonial historical reasons. It's just recently that the Chinese came into the African continent in the global geopolitical game, and the Russians as well. But we don't have any countries that speak Chinese or Russian because they were colonized by these entities. Yet the people are here who are talking. We speak English, we speak Portuguese, we speak Spanish, and all of that because we were colonized and oppressed by these very same people. And yet they're asking themselves questions about, the nefarious role that the Chinese are playing in the African region. Isn't that interesting? I mean, I don't care which way you lean as an African, but just think about this. Isn't this interesting for you?
narratives are power then, aren't they?
Absolutely. And as I said a few minutes ago, and I always will tout this, that we own the facts. We own the facts. We know exactly what.
We own the facts. I want to come back on that issue. But for now, let's just listen to some music. But I want us to come back to that issue. We own the facts. I mean, that is incredible. How can anyone say they own the facts? That is crazy. How do you say we own the facts? That is crazy. So, brothers and sisters, let's just listen to more fertile ground in the meantime. We will be right back after this brief break. Okay.
spirit of the strong you stand. Father Creole, sing your song. The strength within your hands build pyramids like you they stand. Lead on. The protector of the womb, your light illuminates the moon into Ebony queen, Nubian goddess, woman phenomenally. Warrior mother, you just protect the sun and held the light. The planet star, you are the night. You rise. The planet's only sound, and even when they knock you down, still you rise. You see, black is so beautiful. Kissed by the sun as we dance to the drum. So beautiful. Black is so beautiful. Our spirits, our hearts, our steps.
Alright, so we're back again. Black is beautiful. What a wonderful song by Fertile Ground. Shout out. Let's get back into it. So, we're still listening to General Langley express himself about his role in Africa under AFRICOM, Africa Command, a U.S. organization that is based in Africa, apparently meant to fight against terrorism. Let's listen to what General Langley says about his role in Africa and Africa Command's role in Africa. Let's hear what he has to say about this. All right, let's go for it.
What the Chinese Communist Party is doing, and to some degree what the Russian Federation is doing in their propaganda operations, but we don't own the narrative. Both of them own the narrative.
We sure don't.
We don't own the narrative. That's very important. Now, remember earlier, our friend General Langley just said we do not own. He just said that we own the okay, apologies for that. He just said we own the facts. That's what he said, isn't it? We own the facts. And then he goes around and he says, we don't own the narrative. And the senator, of course, prompted him and said, narratives are quite important, are they not? Because all wars are about narratives. It's all about the narrative. Just like it was about the narrative in Iraq. They said Saddam Hussein has got weapons of mass destruction, That was the narrative. And they own that narrative. And so, we have become educated over the years about who we are dealing with when we're dealing with the Americans. And these are the things we look at. The outcomes of decisions that they make over different territories, particularly the African region. And so, we look at it. Okay, we look at Afghanistan in Asia, somewhere there, and we're like, well, these are the weapons of mass destruction, and then later on, after they had invaded the place and destroyed millions of lives, we found out that actually there were no mass weapons of mass destruction, quote unquote. And so, they become more and more questionable, and then they invaded Libya and said that Libya was under an oppressive regime under Colonel Gaddafi. And then, after they invade, we see that the issues press deeper and deeper into Africa. And now, in the so-called Sahel region, the biggest issue they're dealing with is terrorism, which comes from when Colonel Gaddafi was overthrown, the hold that he had on the different factions contesting for power in Libya meant that there was no longer that one central figure holding things together. And so what happened is the violence of those different groups spread into the different regions, including and especially the Sahel. And so Ibrahim Traoré and his comrades found themselves having to deal with this particular issue caused by General Langley and his friends. And now it is being made to look like Ibrahim Traoré is failing. And the people making it to look that way are the ones who actually created the situation. Isn't it crazy? Barack Obama took out Colonel Gaddafi like a dog, in such a humiliating situation. Took out another head of state. And I guess because the United States of America is the one doing it, it must be correct. That is the thinking in the white supremacist culture and way of thinking. It is that this must be correct because we are the ones who did it. You have to see how that's problematic, African family. You have to see how that's problematic. And so now we listen and we hear. You must just hear how my man here pivots very quickly to Ibrahim Traoré. And for me, it just seemed like it wasn't very relevant to Ibrahim Traoré, what was being discussed here. It seemed like it's a discussion on general African security issues. And then all of a sudden, Ibrahim Traoré and Burkina Faso find themselves at the center. Listen to this.
One more thing for you, General Langley. The approach that we have had with USAID and the other things like the President's Initiative on AIDS, how does our U.S. approach compare and contrast to the approach of Russia in Africa and also Communist China in Africa?
Oh, Chairman, we've always had the lead. So what you're seeing in those two competitors or challengers, they're following in our wake. They see what works as far as our influence and deepening partnerships through those soft powers, whether it be health diplomacy or whether it be in development type programs. So they're following in our wake, trying to replicate what we do best. And I think the African countries know this, and so this is where, as we start to look at going forward, as State Department starts to reset these programs, looking at what worked and what didn't work, and doubling down on what does work. I think we have enough capital built up in these countries for them to ensure their stabilization and also prosperity. The other two competitors are just trying to replicate what we do best.
The other two competitors are just trying to replicate what we do best. What is he talking about? What in the world is he talking about? There's a world of a difference in terms of how Russia and China have dealt with Africa in comparison to how the United States and Europe have dealt with Africa. If anything, the Chinese and the Russians have learned that when you deal with Africans, you must deal with them with some semblance of respect. Now, I'm not saying I believe they respect us generally or anything like that, but I'm just saying they do it differently. You know, especially if you're a sovereign African leader, they seem to engage very differently with you. Just like how Putin, you know, respected Ibrahim Traoré's position, you know. And yet, here we have this black man from the United States of America, you know, and I must say, he does not represent all African Americans. We have seen the support that came from all over the world for Ibrahim Traoré, and there were voices in the United States that stood with Traoré, even among the white population, if I might add. And so this institution of the United States of government, I know, does not represent all the voices in the United States of America. That is just a true, nuanced reflection of this whole situation. But we see this man here allowing himself to be used against people of African descent, of whom he is a part of, whether he acknowledges it or not, accepts it or not. Yet he's allowing himself to be used against an African brother. So it's a general anointed by white supremacy, and a general, idolized by African youth. These are the true forces, versus each other. Let's hear what he says further.
I can imagine a situation, though, in which the ruling elite of a country is receiving gratuities on the side that inure to the benefit of the strongman leader, and not to
the strongman leader. You know, this has been a theme for the United States of America. I remember during Obama's time when he said Africa does not need a strong leader, and he was talking about people like Robert Mugabe and others. We don't need and Gaddafi and so on. We don't need strong leaders. And that's before they took out Gaddafi. Africa does not need a strong man. We don't need strong man leaders. And so I wonder, as Africans, are they saying we need weak leaders who can comply with whatever their whims are? Is that what they're saying? Have we thought about this? I mean, you got to think about this, even in reflection to the recent visit of Ramaphosa to the White House. How he was hailed as having been diplomatic. But if you really think about it, was that diplomacy or cowardice? Because we know we have no leverage. You know what I mean? And so that is the real question. Are we being leveraged or are we leveraging? That is the primary question. And if we are being leveraged, then we need to ask ourselves further questions about this. Let us not be so simple as to say, oh no, but our relationship with America ensures we secure jobs and this and that. No, I don't think South Africans should be having those kinds of conversations. We should be asking ourselves, what leverage do we have so that we are not finding ourselves under the thumb of other foreign entities, especially the United States of America. And so we have to ask ourselves these questions. I mean, let's look at this. Let's listen to what they are saying. But General Langley already, I find problematic. Just in this initial speech, they're saying April the 3rd, 2025. This is what he was testifying to. with regards to Africa. Listen to this.
The populace of the country, does that sort of corruption and bribery go on with regard to the Belt and Road?
Absolutely, Chairman. I see this, and I don't mind calling them out, but Captain Traoré and Burkina Faso, as they know that both, whether it's their gold reserves, that is all those proceeds are just in exchange to protect the junta regime.
Now, let's track back a bit. Remember I said in the beginning, first of all, this seemed like a conversation about African security in general. All of a sudden, Ibrahim Traoré in Burkina Faso, volunteering information that was not specifically asked for. And so it makes you wonder, what is with you, between you and Ibrahim Traoré? Is there some personal thing? You know what I mean? But it couldn't be. Possibly someone has instructed you to say these things that you're saying. Brother? Huh? Brother? Huh? Michael Langley? Brother? Who has instructed you to say these things that you're saying? It's a big concern, African family. It's a big concern. Who has instructed him to say these things? What interests is he representing as he stands before the Senate and says these things? 4-star general. Huh? 4-star general. I listened to his other interviews where he spoke a bit about his personal life. He doesn't seem like a bum, man. Brother has worked. He has attended, about 3 U.S. higher education institutions on military. This is not a dumbass, man, that we're dealing with here. But what agendas is he representing, I wonder? And so it brings questions about his opposition to Ibrahim Traoré specifically. He doesn't even talk about Guaita. He doesn't talk about the other man from Niger. Specifically Ibrahim Traoré. What is this thing? Maybe in the future we'll find out, but I wonder, what is this thing with Ibrahim Traoré? What is it that shakes the boots in the empire about Ibrahim Traoré? The thing they say is, the junta is using the gold to protect its power. Let me ask you this, African family. When has it ever been weird or untoward that the head of state of a nation uses the resources of his state to protect his power? I mean, this is political science 101. Machiavelli said it. The first thing you need to do is protect your power. If you don't know Machiavelli, the Prince, read the book. The book that talks about politics from a Western perspective. And because the world is largely controlled by the Western perspective of politics, that is one of the tools of analysis that I use. Machiavelli the Prince. Machiavelli says the first thing you need to do as a head of state is to protect your power by any means, whether it is through alliances, whether it is through your military, whatever you need to do. And so that is the Western perspective, and that is what they apply. So the United States of America will ensure that the power of the president is protected by any means necessary. And whatever resources in the country have to be used will be used to ensure the president is secure, comfortable, and safe. So now it surprises me when you come and say, the junta, Ibrahim Traoré, is using the gold to protect his power. What must happen? What must the gold be used for? I mean, if we're talking in geopolitical terms, it looks like Traoré is also using the wealth of his country to develop it, but if you're saying he's also using it to protect his power, I don't see a problem. What is the issue? You put all of the resources that you can into the safety and the security of the President of the United States of America. And no one is saying anything about that. And every country does the same. So why mustn't Ibrahim Traoré use Burkina Faso gold to protect his power, to ensure that he continues living so that his vision can continue being progressed? What's the problem? Huh? What is the problem? I mean, I speak in geopolitical terms, folks. You know, I don't talk in liberal terms and all of those things that we are made to believe in terms of how the world actually works. I deal with looking at how the world actually works. And like I said in my previous video, the world is a block. And all these different governments are different gangs. And the gang with the most power, with the most influence, controls and runs things. Right now, that is the United States of America, controlling and running things. And now they want to come into Burkina Faso to try and say, look, remember, we run things over here. But now as the youth, we're saying no. That's not how it works, and that's not how it's going to work. Because in Africa now, I don't know if you understand, you're dealing with a different generation. You know? You're dealing with a different generation. You're not dealing with the generation that's going to believe all this propaganda. Because we understand and we know the truth beyond the propaganda, that of how things actually work in geopolitics and the struggle and security competition between nations. We understand all of these things. And the major question we're asking is, why are we always appendages to other nations? You know, why are we always asked whether we support the East or the West? And that is the big question. And that is why Ibrahim Traoré becomes an icon. General Langley. You know Langley. Okay. Let's talk about Langley for a little bit. I want us to talk about Langley. And why this name bothers me somewhat. Langley, CIA HQ. The Central Intelligence Agency headquarters, known as the George Bush Center for Intelligence, is isolated in Langley, Virginia, near Washington, D.C. This facility houses the main offices and functions of the CIA, or the Central Intelligence Agency. In other words, the spying and espionage activities of the United States of America. Huh? That's what we're talking about. Langley. And so this name, Langley, bothers me. Why you got that name, bro? Langley. You know what I mean? And on top of that, you don't just have that name. You are the instrument for imperialism against Africa. Imperial control. It's quite something. Anyway, let's listen to what Langley has to say.
There's a number of examples across. Even in Sudan, what's going on with the rapid support forces and in Burhan of the Sudan forces, when you get down to it, is all about the revenue that can be drawn out of that. And there are nefarious actors in the CCP or in sometimes Russia are complicit in those activities.
Okay, what you can't.
The CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, is responsible, and so is the Russian Federation. I mean, yay, the United States and Europe, you know, they're just innocent. They don't know what's going on, you know, but it is incredible. It is amazing. As I listened to this, I was amazed at how, you know, America and Americans have been made to believe this narrative that they are the blessing in the earth, you know, God's chosen people, and all of those narratives and fairy tales, when they have the most bases in the planet, the most military bases in the planet, and yet we're supposed to fear some threat from elsewhere. They have bases in almost all our countries, but the threat is not from them, it's from someone else. It's very strange, and you know, I know that a lot of African youth are awake now, and much of the world is awake, but if you're still sleeping on this, think about this. How does any of this make sense? How can the threat come from a predetermined direction? Because, as I said, we have many African leaders on the African continent. A lot of them are not doing a great job. And yet, somehow, the biggest problem is Ibrahim Traoré, the guy building roads, you know, establishing agro-processing plants, and, you know, that kind of thing, empowering the locals, you know, which is the question that the senator is asking, isn't it? But somehow, this brother is the enemy. It's very strange for me. Let's listen.
Imagine how frustrating it seems to me that this mineral-rich continent has not been able to move to a utilization of the resources to benefit the people there.
I'm sorry, Senator. I'm real sorry, Senator. But did you just say you don't understand why Africa is a mineral-rich continent? Just cannot get itself to use those resources for its own benefit. Incredible, isn't it? For a senator in the United States of America to say they just don't understand. We just don't understand why, you know, this mineral-rich continent, Africa, has not used its resources for its own benefit. Senator, your lights are on because Africa never developed. You know what I mean? You have the security that you have, the motorcades and all of those things, and in government, and the kind of military you have, the resources you have at your disposal, primarily because the natural resources of Africa did not benefit Africa. In the United States, it doesn't matter what questions you ask or whatever you say, you are able to be there and to ask those questions because Africa's resources have been exploited for the benefit of others, including you, primarily, perhaps primarily you. And so I don't understand this line of questioning, where this senator is, you know, playing all ignorant. He doesn't know, like, why? Oh, why? And you know what they're trying to do there? They're going to say, oh, it must be African leadership, you know, trying to smear African leadership. But these African leaders also don't see that they are used as scapegoats whenever things go wrong. They allow themselves to be used in that way, in order for their power to be temporarily protected. But there will always be a scapegoat. So I don't know why they allow this to be done to them. Let's listen.
After all this time, it's a puzzle that we haven't unwound. Let me.
Oh wow, it is a puzzle we haven't unwound. Oh please, Senator. Oh please. Please. Uncle Sam cannot be saying this to us at this moment. Oh, it's such a puzzle we haven't unwound. Please, give me a break. Please. Please.
Let me see if I can move to General Cavoli, and then I hope we can leave. You're aware of various voices coming from inside government here in the United States, as well as in the media, that have spoken with approval about the Russian organized referendums in 2022 in so-called overwhelming Russian-speaking provinces. General.
All right. So we have General Langley. Now, General Langley was in Kenya recently, apparently for a conference with African heads of military. And then he got an opportunity to meet with a journalist there, to be asked questioned about his intentions in Africa. Listen to this, brothers and sisters. It was so incredible for me that, the backtracking, the diverging, the deflecting from questions when he's asked directly about the comments that he made, which we all have just seen. Listen to how he responds.
General, let's talk about countries taking on their own autonomy. You are on African soil, not for the first time, but this would be a good moment to ask about one of the countries that has taken its own autonomy, and that's Burkina Faso. Yeah. Your remarks recently at the Senate seem to suggest that he's diverting, General Traoré, is diverting its 4 billion gold reserves to sustain his military rule rather than for public welfare. These remarks sparked widespread condemnation across the continent. What did you mean by that statement?
Let me speak to Burkina Faso's sovereignty. They maintain their sovereignty. They make their decisions how they use their resources. They make their decisions who their resources go to for military support.
Now, brothers and sisters, you will have heard from the previous clip, this is not what this man said before. I watched this clip on another channel, and I went in the comments and I said, nah bro, this ain't what you said before. This is not what you said before. Now you're backtracking and you're trying to what do they call this? Spin the narrative now, right? Because in the Senate it was established you don't own the narrative. So now you are trying to own the narrative now, right? Because that was the directive, indirect directive from the Senate to say, hey, we don't own the narrative. And then you said, oh, but we own the facts, which is also not true. You don't own the facts. I mean, what kind of arrogance is that we own the facts? I mean, that's different from we know the facts, right? Because that's how we as Africans would speak and say, yeah, we know the facts, but no, these ones say they own the facts. They just don't own the narrative. And so now they're trying to own the narrative so that they can infuse whatever facts work for them. It's not going to work, Langley, CIA headquarters. It's not going to work. Africa's youth is just too awake for this to work. This, intelligence operation, this op won't work in Africa. By the way, he said in this particular interview, he said Pan-Africanism is strong, whatever. Listen, man, Pan-Africanism been strong. You know what I mean? Pan-Africanism been strong. And it is precisely in existence because of figures like you, General Langley. Pan-Africanism and Pan-Africanists like myself exist because you exist. That is the issue. Let's hear him. Let's hear him out.
That's her sovereign right. But my cautionary tale was just from a military perspective. That was a Senate Armed Services Committee asking me a direct question. Burkina Faso, a lot of great things going on to progress them forward, okay? But then when you look at the military part of it, knowing that that's the epicenter of global terrorism,
the military part of it is the epicenter of global terrorism. Do you hear what this person is saying? African family. And South Africa should take a lesson from this. This is very, very important, South African family. That the narratives being spread about us, it's very crucial we pay attention. It's not just theater. You may think, oh, it's just theater. No, it's not just theater. Narratives play a crucial role in giving legitimacy to certain actions. And so if they say that they need to invade South Africa on account of white genocide, for example, they can do that if they put enough momentum and enough energy behind the myth of white genocide in South Africa. And so that's why narratives are so important. And that's why they are saying, we don't own the narrative. And that's a crucial, crucial concern for them. Them not owning the narrative.
It was my time to illuminate that this is probably their weakest point, and there needs to be sufficient resources going towards for the whole fight of terrorism in that country, period. They make their decisions, though. That's their sovereignty, their sovereign right to make their decisions, what is appropriate, what's not. But I wanted to illuminate that it's going in the wrong direction now. ISIS is getting stronger. JNIM is getting stronger. Al-Qaeda in the lands of the Maghreb is getting stronger in that country.
And do you think it's getting stronger after General Traoré took over?
It has. Just look at the numbers of attacks. It really has, since 2022. I've been tracking this since I took command. So, no ill will towards him, but the decisions is their own. They're looking for other ways to be able to, they're still on warfighting footing. It's just going to take more resources.
So you stand by that statement? Because there's been pressure on you to walk those statements back.
That's my statement. That's my assessment. That is getting worse. More needs to be done for not just local, but whole of country, because of these violent extremist organizations are seeking revenue, they're seeking resources, they're seeking recruiting from the Burkina.
So, let me cut this short, but you can follow this conversation. It's available online. But it's quite interesting to me that the first thing is he does not acknowledge the role that NATO and the Western forces played in this whole disaster. What do I mean by that? When they took out Gaddafi, Gaddafi had under his control a number of different factions that were vying for power in Libya. He had them under his control. His removal then created chaos in that all of those different factions, all those different groups, Islamic extremists and so on, could no longer be checked. And now they are invading all the different neighboring territories, including the Sahel region, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. And so the United States under Barack Obama took out Gaddafi. And in so doing, they created a safe haven for terrorism. Now they are coming back to talk about we need to assist in fighting terrorism. I mean, come on. Are these the people you would trust, realistically? I want us to look at this story holistically. Let's not look at just what is presented to us at face value. When you look at this man's face, this is the face, this right here. This is the face responsible. You understand? Him, not him personally, but the United States empire is responsible for what happened in Libya. You understand? The United States government is responsible for what happened in Libya and the kind of terror and, devastation that came after Gaddafi was removed. They're the ones who removed Gaddafi, so they're responsible for all of that. And so, brothers and sisters, I just want to leave you in perfect love and peace. One love. Yeah. Let me leave you with our song, Fertile Ground. One love, African family. Some things for you to think about.
take over.